Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of UEFA's Take Care podcast. If you've been following us, then you know this initiative uses the power of football to encourage healthier and more balanced lifestyles across Europe. We've already explored three important topics. Today, we're turning our attention to an issue that affects many young persons in today's world: digital addiction. Of course, technology has brought us incredible opportunities to connect and learn, but it's also changed the way we spend our free time, sometimes in ways that aren't always healthy. Think about it. According to studies, 1 in 4 teenagers are using their phones in ways linked to behavioral addiction. Many spend hours scrolling social feeds, binging videos, or gaming. On average, kids now spend more than 4 hours online each weekday and up to 8 hours on weekends. That's the equivalent of 84 days a year lost to screens. It's an issue that worries not just parents and teachers, but also players and coaches in the world of football. And that's why we're here to talk about it today. We're going to do it with an expert on the matter, and that is Chris McKenna, founder of Protect Young Eyes, a non-profit organization dedicated to creating safer digital spaces for kids. He's also a technical advisor to Angel Kids AI and works closely with digital safety advocates and legislators in the United States to craft policies that rein in abusive technologies. During this podcast, we'll also be getting insight from former England manager Gareth Southgate, who will be sharing his experience on how the use and sometimes the abuse of technology can affect the lives of players both in the dressing room and on the pitch. But we're going to start with Chris. Delighted you could join us today for this Take Care podcast. As you know, this UEFA series really tries to promote health and well-being. Digital addiction very much a threat to that. And the first question I have for you, Chris, is why has digital addiction become such a pressing issue today?
Well, thank you, Pedro. I love how we can use technology in this positive way to share this information and to educate. It's an issue of access. We have it in our pockets. It's portable. It's small. It was a different issue when there was a big computer sitting in the living room that everybody had to share and it was slow. And that's different than what we have today. I mean, heck, I can wear it. It's on my wrist. It's an inch wide and it connects to the rest of the world. And so I think that just causes us to be more attached.
There's no question about it. And I think obviously we all struggle with knowing how often we use technology, and especially the portable devices and our smartphones. What's the difference, you would say, between a normal use of technology and what digital addiction is? What does it look like? Can you help us define it?
Sure, I can maybe relate it to a tool, right? A hammer that sits in the garage is something I go and use when I need it from time to time. That's a healthy use of a tool. When it starts to go the other way, where it's using me and I don't necessarily even think about the fact that I'm using it, or I find that I maybe feel less and worse about myself after using it. Now we're starting to cross into territory where I think we need to just be reflective and ask ourselves some questions about the type of relationship that we have with, in this case, our digital devices.
As parents, I think there is such a challenge to be able to navigate this landscape because, of course, we don't want to shut out children from the use of technology because that's virtually impossible. If they don't do it at home, they're going to do it somewhere else.
That's right.
However, at the same time, there needs to be a measure of control and a measure of education. Before we get to those areas, I wanted to ask you, what are some of the symptoms that parents, educators, teachers, coaches should look for in digital addiction? How do you know that maybe a young person is starting to suffer from this?
Yeah, no, that's good. Young people during this phase of life are curious and adventurous, and they try a lot of things. They try different sports, right? They have a ton of energy usually, right? These are some of the attributes that we look for in young people. And so some of the things, Pedro, that I think both parents and coaches and any caregiver can look for is changes. Now, in the tween and teen years, there's always changes, right? That's just a part of being a young person, but there's a level of change that I think is an indicator of something else. So maybe sudden poor performance at school, some of their responsibilities at home. They withdraw in a way that is unusual, different from a baseline, right? With sadness, anxiety, irritability, their sleep patterns change. They maybe need to spend more and more time online. That can be a sign of addiction where the same amount of time no longer satisfies me. I need to get more and more. That's something we often associate with substances like drugs and alcohol. And we're seeing some similarities when it comes to compulsive uses of social media and also gaming. Maybe they're giving up previously enjoyed activities. I used to enjoy doing this, or I used to spend a lot of time doing this, and now I'm foregoing those activities for more time online. It can also look in behavior changes too. Maybe you're starting to notice lying and deception so that they can be online. And so these are some of the things that, I think as parents, yes, of course, all teenagers and tweens, they change. And this is a time when a lot of stuff is moving and changing, but there is a level of change. There are indicators like these that we have to be aware of. And when it starts to be a pattern over time, then we need to jump in and take a closer look.
I think you were very clear in the way that you were able to explain and portray what some of these symptoms could be. It would be fair to say that there's been a change in everyone's social behavior with the increase of use of technology. It's completely normal and accepted these days, if we are even in a conversation, to interrupt that conversation and use a mobile phone because we may have received a notification, whether it's from work,
Right.
whether it's a message from family. I think social behaviors have been changing a lot, and you've noticed that, right? Not only in your working environment, but I guess in schools, in courses, social behaviors have changed dramatically with the increased use of technology.
There's no question. I think we see this just in the way that young people sometimes are interacting with each other, sitting at a table and not looking at each other, and instead communicating maybe 3 feet away on a device or a meter away, right? Because that's just what they've been accustomed. And what I want to impress upon us, for parents and caregivers listening to this, is we can easily judge them for that. But at the end of the day, Pedro, a lot of that's not their fault. We've allowed this. We've given them access. And if we were their age and we were given this kind of access, we would have over time been groomed to communicate in the exact same way because it's easier, it's engaging. And so those are some of the things that I think are very obvious. There was a survey that was done there across 19 European countries, asked 25,000 children questions about how they feel when they're online. And in all countries across these 19 European nations, about 1 in 10 children never feel safe online. That when they're online, they feel this sense of anxiety. Wow. They feel this sense that there's something wrong. And yet we're the ones that give it to them. Some countries, even more than others. The highest was in Spain. 44% of children, they never find other people who are kind or helpful to them. Like, that was their own response when asked, do you find helpful, kind people? And 44% of children in Spain said they never do. So I think we have to be mindful as parents that we've allowed this introduction, we've allowed these screens into their lives, and then we just expect them to get it right, instead of coming alongside them and showing them how to use it in a way that's more like a tool instead of it using us.
Great point, Chris. And we were talking about the change in social behaviors. Obviously, when it comes to football, it's a reflection of society. So we've seen behaviors change in environments that pertain to football teams. And I mentioned at the top of the show that we would be getting some insights from the former England manager, Gareth Southgate. And we're going to have a chance now to get some insight from him into how the behavior around a dressing room, around a team, has changed from the time before technology was present and smartphones were present to the time after they became more prevalent.
Yeah, very social. People talked to each other. You'd have different card schools going on, not always for money, but some. I remember playing in a school where you had to count numbers and you'd play for points, and it was quite strategic. And while you're playing, you'd be interacting and laughing and speaking about life. And slowly you got on buses with televisions, so there might be a video that half the team would watch together, and you slowly saw that trend towards then, individual DVD players where people are then headphones are going on and a little bit less interaction on the coach. Then, because of mobile phones and a change towards actually now people in dressing rooms, perhaps a little bit more isolated as well, so less interaction within dressing rooms. I mean, people have always wanted to listen to music in dressing rooms, so it's not unusual for people to cut themselves off just before performing and getting themselves mentally prepared. But of course, you now have people looking at this device rather than actually taking time themselves and preparing. And then post-game, of course, players receiving messages from people they know, but then looking for feedback, if you like, on their performances, which is never really a good idea. I think you're vulnerable at those moments anyway. You're tired. You're always going to find something critical, within 1,000 comments. Even if it's only one, the one critical comment is going to stick in your mind more than all of the other positive comments. And if you're not able to really think rationally about that and be in a good space yourself, then handling that is very difficult and can change your mood.
Interesting feedback there from Gareth Southgate. And of course, Chris, when it comes to younger generations, and whether it's younger players or younger students or children who can be affected by the use of technology, and one thing is the use, the other thing is the abuse of technology, right? So when it comes to the abuse of technology, how does this particularly affect children?
Well, we can start to see significant impacts on their mental well-being. We know that all of us as human beings operate better when we're rested. And this is particularly true for young people. And so when, for example, we allow devices in the bedroom, which is a place where young people like to be. And so we allow them to carry their devices in their bedroom. Now we're allowing them to interrupt that critical time when they need to be sleeping. And again, that's not their fault. Notifications and videos and YouTube and WhatsApp, these are all extremely addictive, and they are so easy to who wouldn't want to check if you're friends? Because what we have to remember as parents is young people love their friends. They want to connect with their friends. That's the way that they are. That's the way that we were. Now we've given them a device that allows them to stay connected all night long. And I've spoken to many young people who before going to school the next day were up all night long, whether it was watching or keeping track of notifications. And so that is a significant impact on their mental well-being. And it's the fear of missing out, FOMO, which it's sometimes referred to. We feel this as adults even, and needing to check. But if you're a young person who craves connection, then you fear missing out on anything that you're connected to with your friends. And so notifications, however we feel as adults when we get notifications, multiply that times 100. And that's the effect that it's having on our young people in terms of their need to check. I need to check. I can't just ignore that because I might be missing something. And so we've put this device into their pockets. Again, I want to say it because I think it's worth repeating. And then we get mad when they misuse it. Yet we've put the device in their pocket that almost preys on some of their natural vulnerabilities that they have at this age. And honestly, Pedro, that's not their fault.
No, and it's tremendously difficult for us as adults sometimes to deal with this. So for children, as you mentioned, the challenge is forever greater. When it comes to the damage that prolonged use and abuse of technology can have, what are the threats that are there? You mentioned, obviously, the fatigue, mental fatigue, emotional fatigue, that must come into when it applies to short-term impact, but long-term impact of this repetitive behavior. From your experience and expertise, how would you describe it?
Well, I want to point to some specific work that is being done here in the States at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Pedro. There's a lab, the National Center on Technology Use, Brain, and Psychological Development. And they bring in teenagers and they ask them to report the number of times they pick up their phone. I don't know if listeners or watchers of this are aware, but if you have an Apple device, an iPhone, it keeps track of the number of times that you pick it up. That's in the settings. And so this lab would look at the number of pickups, and they would also look at the amount of time, because your phone tracks the amount of time you spend on apps, and would put those things across a map. And then they would take these same teens and put them under fMRI machines to actually look at their brains. And for those young people who had the most pickups and the most amount of time on the apps, and let me say that the average number of pickups were around 100 for all of these young people. At the top end, over 400 times, and spending 8 to 12 hours a day on their devices. And what did that mean? It meant that those who picked up their devices the most and checked their phones the most had the most activation in their amygdala, which exhibits a hypersensitivity to social signals. In other words, when I'm constantly being notified and told and communicated with on my device, then when I am not with that device, Pedro, and I'm in the regular world, I'm hypersensitive to everybody communicating, and I'm tuned the same way in the real world. It also pointed toward that 25%, and these are teens that are self-reporting, in their own words, Pedro, 25% of these teens self-reported being moderately or severely addicted to social media. Like, in their own words, they're saying, I have a problem. And we need to listen to these signals, not just in what the teens themselves are telling us, but what the science is also telling us, that there's signals here that we really need to pay attention to.
And they're clear. They're clear for parents. They're clear for teachers. They're clear for coaches. And that is exactly what Gareth Southgate also said when he was asked to explain what kind of habits are negatively impact young people, young players, and just society overall, and how football can help when it comes to dealing with it, and when it comes to also creating different, healthier habits. So let's take a look at what Gareth Southgate has to say about that.
Digital habits affect the well-being of young people, and therefore it would be unrealistic to think that footballers aren't going to be part of that, and that where does pressure come from? It's the voice in your own head. And the voice in your own head responds to everything that's around it. And so if there's a build-up of negativity around you, and you're constantly reading things that put doubt in your mind, then it's very easy as a young person to feel more pressure, to feel more anxiety. And in a performance field, that's going to affect your performance. One of the things that's lacking enormously in the modern world is physical exercise, and football encourages togetherness. It encourages you to exercise. Generally speaking, you're going outside, all of which are good things for your well-being. Physical fitness, grassroots football especially is about having fun. I mean, professional football should be, but there is a point at which it becomes a job. And so it's a little bit more nuanced than just being fun. But the fact is that most kids aren't going to be professionals, and most grassroots football and grassroots coaches have to remember that kids are there to enjoy themselves, to make friends, to run around, to burn off energy, but to get better at something, to learn something, but they're not there to be a Champions League striker, and that's really important when we're coaching young kids. And also, as a coach, you might be the most important person in their life. You might be the person that has a connection where they can come and open up to you and talk about something else that's going on in their life. You'll notice, because you work with the team regularly, that a youngster's mood might change over a period of time, and you might be able to have conversations that other people can't. So there are so many brilliant aspects to grassroots sport, and football being a team sport brings people together working as a team as well. So I think as coaches, we have to remember those things as well.
So Gareth, they're clearly advocating football as a solution and physical activity as a whole as well, Chris. I think it'd be pretty fair to say. But in your opinion,
That's right.
what role can football play helping children and the youth overall balance their digital life?
Well, to me, football is the ultimate antidote to many of these problems. We like to give kids small white pills in order to make them feel better. Let's get rid of all that and let's just give them a white ball to kick around instead. It's the perfect antidote because it points us back to the physical world. It points us back to human connection. And there is no sport on earth that is played by more humans than football. And so it's not just that, it teaches kids the importance of life skills like goal setting, teamwork, sportsmanship, discipline, resilience. You have to push through losses. You celebrate the wins. You work together. You pick each other up. There is so much that happens on the pitch that then translates into real life, because most things in real life don't operate on a YouTube or a Snapchat loop of dopamine.
No.
These are things that require time, that require investment, that require relationship. Those are the things that matter. And of course, football is a great example of that. And so when it comes to physical activity, that's what our young people were made for. They wire up. There's a quote out there that says, brains are built, not born. We build up our brains and we build up our resilience and we build up our relationships in the physical world. And it just helps us be better adults at the same time.
What are some pieces of advice that you can give when it comes to dealing with children or teens that are exhibiting some of those behaviors connected with digital addiction? What is, obviously there's not a magic solution. There's not one piece of advice that is going to resolve it. But what is a way to navigate this without alienating the youths?
That's right. Well, and one thing that I always suggest when a parent wants to maybe tone things back a little bit is to say some of the exact things that you just said, right? This isn't a situation where it's now me versus my child. I want to do whatever I can to communicate to my son or daughter that I am with them. I am for them. I want them to get this right. And so we invite them into some of the solutions. And you're just really honest. I've noticed this and this. I've noticed that you've started to behave or do these things. And I think that this is a better way to go. What are some of your ideas? And invite them in, give them some agency, give them some ownership in this. I invite families to have and parents to have your non-negotiables. Maybe you've decided we are no longer going to have devices in the room at night. Make that the thing that is non-negotiable, but then make other things a little bit negotiable, right? So don't make everything a battle. Choose the things that are significant and important to the well-being of your child, like get the devices out of the room at night, and then invite them into what some of the rest of the day could look like to find those places where you can compromise. But I want this to, wherever possible, I want parents to be parents and to have that authority, but to see this as something that we're working on together so that we can come to a spot where we're all better off.
Are there any mistakes that caregivers can make when addressing this issue? You mentioned avoiding a conversation where it's me versus you, where it's me just trying to change your behavior in a forceful manner without explaining to it. So surely that is not a way to go. And this process of education as well must be important, right? To get them to listen and to understand the reasons why. Not just stop doing it, but this is why you should stop. And these were some of the dangers are if you continue.
That's right. And, so I think sometimes as parents, we let the things we're afraid of get in the way of our parenting. And so if you're a parent who's concerned about how your child is using technology, don't turn into a spy where you're sneaking and trying to see what they're doing and not communicating. Because if as a parent, we are spying on our kids and sneaking around and not being honest with them, I think all that really does is turn our amazing young people who honestly know more about this technology than we do, it turns them into a little digital ninja, and they're going to find a way around us anyway. And I think sometimes that's us almost compelling them to see this as a me versus you. And in a me versus you, in a parent versus kid, when it comes to technology, moms and dads and caregivers, we always lose that battle. And I want to say some of these things out loud to young people to say, hey, I am making some of these decisions because I care about you. I want to see you thrive. I want to see you be amazing in these and that way. Let's work on this together. And we build what we call digital trust, this digital relationship with our young people so that we can see this as something we're doing together and not apart.
Are there any specific situations where technology should be avoided when it comes to the social family life? So you mentioned the bedroom, for example, as a place that should be off limits, at least for the youngest children, I'm guessing as well. Are there other times of the day where
Absolutely.
real human interaction should be exclusive without any use of technology?
Absolutely, Pedro. I've talked about, bedtime. There's the big three: car time, mealtime, bedtime. Like if there are times when we have the opportunity to interact and to get to know each other, right? Nothing in the meals. And that means even for us and moms and dads and caregivers, your phone being upside down, which is sometimes what we do to say, oh, we're not using our phone. That is not focus. You and I both know that even when it's upside down on the table next to us, about half of our brain is still thinking about what's going on that device. We need to create physical distance. So in my home here, we have a charging station where all the phones get charged that is in my office, physically apart from everywhere else. That's where they charge at night. That's where they go during meals. I also mentioned car time. When you're stuck in a vehicle driving somewhere, we often say under an hour, turn off the power. Like any time where you're going to be in a vehicle for an amount of time like that, look outside, talk about what's going on. It's a captive audience. You're strapped in a seatbelt. You have a time now to talk to each other. And I think car time is another beautiful moment for us to get to know each other and even be a little bit bored and to look outside and observe the world around us, things that you and I used to do when we were in cars and going on trips with our parents. Those are things that are still good for young people today.
Yeah, and there is a fear of boredom these days. There's no doubt about it with the constant stimulation that we have. We've been talking about the roles of parents, caregivers, the roles of coaches in helping children and young people deal with this challenge of balancing their life online. And this is also something that Gareth Southgate talked about, and he has no doubt that adults can help and should help, and even governing bodies have a role when it comes to setting an example.
Well, I think it's hugely positive that we're speaking about this subject now because UEFA are conscious that they have a responsibility to help educate young people, and they have a voice and a platform that can help young people and older people who might be coaching those younger people or parents of younger people. So football has influence. Footballers and people involved in football professionally have a voice, have influence, have reach. So it's always important that we use that positively.
Final question from my side. Is there a message that you would like to leave the UEFA community and everyone who will be listening or watching this podcast regarding the way in which digital addiction should be approached and the dangers that are there and the solutions that are there? So obviously we've talked a lot about the different components of it, but if there's just one final concise message, maybe an aspirational one, inspirational one, practical one that you can leave taking into account your experience on the matter.
You bet. I'm just thankful for this opportunity. And parents and coaches, this is on us. We have the ability and the influence to shape the lives of our young people and of our children. And this includes their digital lives. And I would position that there is nothing shaping their hearts and minds like the little box, this digital box that we have given them. We are responsible for their future wellness, not their current happiness. And I want us to be making decisions for them now that set them up for future wellness. And we can do this joining up with other parents and coaches and clear communication. We can do this if we do it all together.
I think you were very clear once again, Chris, and I think these words are so valuable for all of us who care about the future and the well-being of our children, and hopefully along with the toolkit that's been handed out by UEFA, the podcast, the webinar, and a lot of the experts we've been listening to, both from this landscape and the football industry as well, kind of joining everything together, we'll be able to get the pieces of the puzzle that can make the solutions easier to find for all of those who may be struggling with this. So we'd like to thank you very much for your time, for sharing your insights, for sharing your experience. And I think we all learned a lot during this conversation. So thank you so much, Chris.
My pleasure. Thank you, Pedro.
And that will wrap up this fourth episode of the UEFA Take Care podcast. Stimulating conversation with Chris, another one with an expert who has given us so much value in his thoughts and in his experience as well on the subject of digital addiction. There are 2 modules left as part of UEFA's Take Care program. As always, we'll tell you to head over to uefa.com/takecare for more information on the 4 modules that have been launched. That is physical activity, nutrition, mental health, and now digital addiction, and also get a preview of what's ahead. As always, thank you so much for listening. Continue to keep your eyes peeled for the upcoming content that UEFA will continue to publish on this matter. See you soon.